I'm not sure you're supposed to understand.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's Central Falls City Council meeting. The clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Baena.
Present.
Councilperson Kazarian.
Present.
Councilperson Figueroa. Present. Councilperson Rivas Lugo.
Present.
Councilperson Rosado Martinez.
Present.
Councilperson Velez Garcia. Absent. Council President Ferry.
Present.
Council President, we have four.
All please rise. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone.
Council President, in front of you, you have an amended agenda. We asked, because we have moved some things around on number 7, specific to item B and C. So we asked the council if we could entertain a motion to accept the amended agenda for tonight's meeting.
All those in favor, have you?
I'll make a motion
I will.
to accept that, to change the agenda.
I would second it.
Motion in 2
I
seconds.
requested the change.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Motion passes 6-0. Next item on the agenda, on the number 3, is public comment.
Public comment now open. Seeing no one signed up, hearing no one signed up. Now closed.
Next item on the agenda, on the number 4, is approval of records, meeting minutes from January 13th, 2025, council meeting.
Has everyone read and reviewed the minutes of the previous meetings?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve both collectively.
Motion by
I'll second.
Councilman Mayor, second by Councilman. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Motion passes 6-0. The next item on the agenda is on item number 5, executive communication, department financial reports for January 2025. We have city clerk's office, Department of Public Works and Code Enforcement, fire department, police department, and finance.
Same thing, everyone reviewed the department financial reports for January.
Yes, I had a couple of questions on, the one on the code enforcement report and then the rest on the, finance.
What was the,
So the question, is on page there's one. So there's one where it's, I just wanted to understand like the format of it, so there's like the record type, and then applicant, maybe postal paid, then I assume the next one is a fully different, record where it says building type, owner, name. I just wondered, for record, there's a building type that says restaurant, City of Central Falls. Wondered what that was it, is it this building next to it that was a restaurant and is now gonna be something else? Or, I know I had to rotate it because it.
Yeah, I'm like trying to. My computer isn't rotating. Could you just reiterate which?
Yeah, so, on the third line of it looks like the records that are on the right side where it says building type. The third one says restaurant, and then owner says City of Central Falls.
1400 and 1500 Broad Street, so that's Sunday.
Sorry, I'm trying to rotate my.
I know.
Sounds like you're
I
rotating.
can look up the permit number too.
Probably most efficient if Mary, I look into this and
Yeah,
get back to you.
no worries, and along those lines, RJ, just
Yep.
what clubhouse is? 'Cause I was looking in the zoning to see what the clubhouse is, cause there's one,
What row is that?
that one is.
Same sheet, page 16.
Same sheet, same line, which is building type, and maybe like halfway down says clubhouse, which represents Central Falls Development. Like, I see it's 44 Central Street, but what is a clubhouse?
Part of this is also we changed the format of this one, because we're trying to get the code ones out faster.
Sure,
So let me look into this and get back to you.
no problem, thank you. And then the finance question was about the ARPA funds, because some of them require matching funds, so I just wondered, if we felt that we would be able to get all the matching funds, or if we have gotten all the matching funds necessary to be able to spend down on those.
On any of our ARPA related
Can you
grants?
just make
Yeah.
sure that you go up to the,
Sure. I'm sorry, so Councilwoman, you just saying, you just wanna make sure that we are emphasizing that there was a match requirement for anything regarding ARPA, that we do have the match?
That's correct.
We do.
Okay, perfect. That was really, cause I
No, I-
saw it was, it said like matching funds required, so, and I know we're spending down, but I just wanted to make sure that we are able to spend on everything because we have matching.
Without a doubt, and what we did more than anything is really leverage our ARPA dollars as much as we could to bring in other federal resources. Okay,
Thank you, guys.
any other questions in regards to?
No, that's it.
Okay, that was easy. Thank you for going easy me, day after the Super Bowl, I appreciate
One
it.
today.
Anyone else?
So, it's,
Looking for a motion to approve the, executive communications collectively.
so moved.
Councilman Day.
So,
We have a first and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Both sides. Thank you. I'm gonna ask a request, at this point, to jump over the presentation of the audit for probably 10 minutes.
Works perfectly, she's not here.
Oh, I thought you were.
I spoke to her, she's on her way, she was
Away?
looking for parking.
Oh, good. Okay, and I'd like to go on to, water licenses, if they're there, the people that come out here and entertain it.
We need a motion.
I'll make a motion to change.
We're gonna jump over, we're gonna go into, we're gonna move, B,
To move item B up to the top of the
signify by saying aye.
Need a second?
I'll second that.
I believe that was the awareness, yes.
She's not here.
I can vouch for that walk, it's a great cause, and, I can't walk in any walk, but that's a whole other issue, but, yeah, it's a great cause. A couple of years ago, I walked in it, I think we started at, veteran school, and for what it's worth, you all get a t-shirt also, but, so it's a walk for, that particular syndrome, all I can say, it's a positive, and they don't need any, police, authority or anything to, for the streets or anything, you generally stay on the sidewalk, and so it's a safe walk also, so.
No, it's, by my
They
understanding,
change it?
it's not, they use police, so.
Oh, they do?
Yes,
Oh,
because
just-
when we walk, and I walk with
you
them,
just- Yeah,
it's in
just
the-
front,
it's in
that's
the street,
correct. But
yes,
I'm
they
thinking
have-
more of, yeah, I know it's all.
they have one in the front, one in
Yeah.
the back, yeah, for
Yeah,
safety.
yeah, so it is safe, that's
For
right.
safety issues, yes.
Correct,
Yeah.
yes, so
And
we
I
go from the high school until Dexter, then we go back
I
again.
think we stayed on the sidewalk over here, right? So now they go right down the
Yeah, last
street.
year we went
No, it's
in the streets,
no, it's
yeah,
the street.
it was in the street, yeah. Yeah, and it's a
Anyway,
big one, yeah.
it's a good cause,
Mhm.
so.
Yeah, I would make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
I see.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
I think there was another one. Yeah.
Next item on the agenda is item C, a petition to the Central Falls City Council, Login Entertainment, 499 High Street, Central Falls, doing business as Enos Place, 499. They request an extension on picking up the license. I have Mr. Jack DeRosa here, who's representing Mr. Lima. Mr. Lima
Okay.
unfortunately had an accident and is in the hospital, so he's unable to be here.
Oh, wow.
I heard that.
Hi,
How you doing? Yes, sir. How are you?
looking for an extension?
Yes, Mr. Lima said that he was in the process of selling the business and it didn't go through, so he had some difficulties. And I guess he closed the account of taxation, so now he needs, you guys to grant him one time so he can get the license, I believe.
I have no problem, anything else, I know he's come before us a few times. Fortunately, we don't, at one time, we had a limit on licenses. And, if someone held up somebody else, it was hard, but that's not the case anymore, we no longer have that. We had like locked in at 20-something, one class of license fee. So I have no problem with it, but it would have been a problem a few years ago because we had a limited number of licenses. If somebody held it up for 5, 6, 7, 8 months, then that would block someone else from applying for that license. Anyone else have questions? All those in favor of granting an extension?
Need a motion.
Yeah. You have a
Make the motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor of granting the extension, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Best
Thank
of
you.
luck. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And I'd also like to move up, I see the judges here, Mr. Sawyer, I'd like to move up his appointment.
That's the next item on the agenda, sir.
Well, actually, let's give him a presentation.
So the next item on the agenda is item B, election of probate judge pursuant to Division 1, Article 2 of Chapter 14, Courts of the Central Falls Code of Ordinance. This is the reappointment of Mr. Bruce Sawyer.
Come on up, please. Tell him how many years I've been here. The old neighbor. Tell him how many years you've been.
How many's in my family? No, there's 8 of us, somebody on this house. No, this is a position I've had for 28 years now. I don't take it lightly.
probate court, I think, we play a vital role in, especially in minor guardianship statute that's, we've implemented in the probate court system to allow the immigration process to flow and work hand in hand with the family court. I'm very proud of that. We've been working very well with the family court to establish that nexus, and kind of educating the other probate courts in Rhode Island as to how we can streamline that process to make it more efficient. And that's something that this probate court, Central Falls, is what we're known for and what we've established. And certainly something I'm very proud of with the clerks in the courts. And we're looking to continue that and be a little bit more active and to make sure that that process continues without a hitch.
You've done a great job.
Thank you.
You represented the neighborhood very well.
Yes.
Anyone have any questions?
You said 28 years?
28 years.
You started with 2? You're not very young.
I gotta stay young to keep up with Bob.
Any questions for the judge? All those in favor of this appointment, signify by saying aye.
You need a motion?
I thought I asked you. Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
We have a motion. Kevin?
Yeah.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Motion passes.
Best of luck on your next 28 years.
Thank you. Thank you, Council President, City Council.
Council President, State Representative Al-Zaki. Next item on the agenda is item E, the appointment of municipal court pursuant to Division 1, Article 2 of Chapter 14, Courts and Central Falls Code of Ordinance, the appointment of Robert J. McConnell, municipal court.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening. Hi.
Family medical issues, I've been extra cautious with the mask.
How many years you been?
I think it's about 8, I was just thinking, not 28, but I think it's been about 8 years.
We've never had any problems with your court.
Yeah, I think I'm really proud of the receivership program. The trash violations are legitimate and you deal with them as best I can. And now the lead paint program that they've instituted, I think is really, I've done lead paint cases as a lawyer for 25 years. The city's using, I think, a real carrot and stick approach with the landlords. We have Rhode Island Housing is there for people who need assistance, and I think I'm really proud and it's really I think a worthwhile program. I'm really proud to be part of it.
How about mold spores? Do you have a lot of complaints about mold?
Not in this court, not that I've dealt with, but it's mostly, the housing court, the one section is it's more just the trash or the junk violations of people throwing garbage into the recycle, which again, I think the Providence Journal had an article about it last week or two. I mean, that's what we say to them, hey, it's cost the city a lot of money if the trash gets rejected, so. But overall, I'd say the staff that I worked with are great, and I've really been proud to do it, and I look forward to continuing in my tenure.
Anyone else? Looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Best of luck.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
So then President, may I ask a question? So, Judge McConnell is our associate judge.
Thank you for the question, Councilwoman. Yes, we are obviously taking our time to make sure that we've got a full evaluation process. I don't want to make a hard commitment, but the hope is that by either this coming council meeting or the one after, our goal is as soon as possible. But as was released publicly in the mayor's statement, Judge McConnell, in his capacity as Associate Justice, is covering that role for the time.
Thank you.
Okay, he didn't meet as much as the other two judges, correct? We didn't use him as much, the judge that stepped out.
I'm going to defer to Solicitor Jurzik on the cadence. Your question is essentially about the meeting cadence for
So that position isn't, the workload isn't as large as the other two judges, correct?
in his position as Associate Justice, when he's covering essentially housing court, that meets once a month.
Yeah, Judge McConnell had periodically filled in on the
Okay,
traffic
so
calendar.
we got, there is time here, so.
Right.
Yeah, that's, I guess, what I was driving.
We're comfortable from a bandwidth standpoint.
Yeah, we're covered.
Yeah.
Covered.
That's right.
Yes.
You want to go to the present issue here?
Yes.
Excuse me, Council President, we have Reb Al-Rati here. She's here for resolutions that are, the schedule of those hearings as B and C. We're wondering if it's possible to have a motion. to move her up.
Yeah, I would like to make that motion to send,
I'll second that. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Chair votes aye.
So resolution item B, in the schedule of bills and hearing information is resolution 5042, which is essentially, it's implementation of AJ lending in Rhode Island. Essentially why, I wanted to introduce this, and I'll allow Rep. Alsate to kind of explain a little bit more about it, but AJ lending really just targets, low-income communities and really exasperates sort of poverty in our communities, and so I felt it was a really good bill, and I wanted to support it. But Rep, if you want to share.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me, Council President and council members. Thank you so much to Councilwoman Baena for introducing this. Payday lending has been around at the State House for about 15 or so years. 2 years ago, the House of Representatives was able to pass it unanimously and what we call tripartisan support. We do have an independent in the House with no discussion. And so what we have been trying to do is to eliminate payday lenders in all of the states. Why is this important? At the federal level, our favorite and beloved Congressman Jack Reed has also put this in federal legislation, trying to pass it as well. It is already it's already been passed for military members and Native American reservations. So why not do the same for everyday Americans? In our community, specifically for Pawtucket and Central Falls, we have payday lenders that go after our constituents in our communities, especially our senior citizens and those that do not speak that don't speak English well. And so we've been continuously trying to pass this. I understand some of the pushback. You know, a lot of our community sometimes needs a little bit of extra money for that month. What if they need to pay a car payment or a light bill, something of that sort? However, one thing that we have failed to mention is that we have other institutions that help our communities when they need a little bit extra cash. A lot of our credit unions have programs that are not predatory and that are able to help our residents build credit when they need it. And so we will continue to fight for this at the state level, make sure that what I like to call a merry-go-round of debt, we can get rid of it because it's really actually hurting our community versus actually helping them. For our communities that have Social Security or disability, they are the ones who are hit the hardest. They are essentially being asked to pay for something 13 days rather than 15 days, and we all know that majority of us get paid every 2 weeks. They're getting hit with major fines before they even borrow the money. And so it comes out of their paycheck, so every month they're continuously borrowing this money and they don't really know about it. And so when they go and check their accounts, they don't actually have the money that they think that they have. And then it's hurting so many others, young people, hurting their trying to build credit. And so there are other mechanisms. We're trying to push that more so people understand that we can get rid of payday lenders and have other options for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. I would also add that they have like really high interest rates. And so, you know, credit cards are already high, but payday lending has usually even way higher interest rates. And like the Rep said, it just creates this cycle of debt. So really hoping that we can support this bill at the state level.
Thank you.
Any questions of the representative? Hearing none, seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Motion. Do we have a
I think Councilman is out session.
roll call vote?
Councilperson Baena,
Yes.
Councilperson Kazarian,
Yes.
Councilperson Figueroa,
Yes.
Councilperson Rodriguez Lugo. Yes. Councilperson Rosado Martinez,
Yes.
Council President Ferry.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you all for that support. Also, the next item, so 7C, is a resolution supporting House Bill 5225 that would create the Protecting Spaces Act. And I'll just let the rep introduce what the bill is about, and then if you know anyone has questions.
Yeah, so thank you again, Councilwoman Baena. So the Protected Spaces Act is a piece of legislation that was brought to me from the Carpenters Union. One thing that we are seeing under this new presidential administration is the fear of having ICE immigration come into our communities and maybe unlawfully deporting some of our undocumented community. Immigration is a really broad issue. It's not a black and white issue as many as we all wish that it could be. And so what this will do is allow for, in Rhode Island, while it's already federal law, I believe it's federal law, ICE is not able to go into schools, churches, and hospitals. What we have seen in the last month of this new administration is that they themselves are not, they believe that they are above the law. And so what we are trying to do, while we are not trying to detain anyone or keep anyone that should not be here, we want to make sure that in these spaces where people go to get help, they're not fearing for their life. In the last 2 weeks, I have heard from many constituents from Central Falls, because I also represent the Central Falls and Pawtucket, is that they are missing a high level of school with their children, they're not going to their jobs, and they're not leaving their homes, they're not going to doctor's offices. And as we all know, some of these places, especially doctor's offices, are finding a lot of our patients. And so they're scared to leave. And in a hospital, when somebody goes there to get help, they should not be afraid that they will, be detained by ICE. A school, children are in school. I myself was in high school when my dad was first detained from ICE, and so this is why I believe that this is really important, that we have to really keep this here in Rhode Island. Make sure that if students are at school, that it is a safe space. And also, and in churches. We find a lot of resources at churches whenever we need help with whether it's food or, even our own spiritual health, as well as groceries. Churches are a great resource for a lot of our undocumented community, as well as some of our own citizens. And so they should not fear to go to these places and it's really, if there is an actual warrant, we have to learn how to read warrants. We have to make sure that they're signed by a real judge who are looking for these particular individuals. But if we don't have that and we know that we can create a fake one, we don't want to scare people. We want people to make sure that if they are in these spaces for whatever reason, that they are feeling safe. And so that is why I took this on, because I believe it's really important, especially for a community like Central Falls, where we have a majority immigrant community and not every Latino or not every person that does not speak English is undocumented. And they are in these spaces, and we want to make sure that they feel safe there. So thank you.
Thank you, Rev. I would just, just reiterate that, I felt it was important. I myself would be considered undocumented at one point. And there's a lot of different ways people can become undocumented. We hear a lot of, they should do it the right way, but if we really start digging and figuring out what the right way is, it becomes a little complicated. And so my intention with this bill was to support the protection of people who are, of our community, where they could, access these resources and these spaces without fear. So, I will leave it there and we'll.
I spoke to Representative Fidalgo. I had a couple of concerns, but he cleared them up. One was the key to this is a bench warrant, correct?
Mm-hmm.
They just can't go into a church or a school without a bench warrant. I also spoke briefly with the colonel of our police department. I know part of this is limiting the state and local police participating in the federal immigration. And the chief told me that the federal feds have the right to come into a city, and they generally, they will notify our police department. So the key to this, I think, which to me solidifies this, is they have to have a bench warrant. And, but also, like the chief said, they can come into our city. They don't have to tell the city either that they come in, but they generally do it as courtesy. But, so I ran it by them. The key here that I do like is they need a bench warrant. But I don't think that's the case all the time, is it that? Can they come into the city? This is specific churches and schools, I understand. I don't think that that's you come in without a bench warrant.
Traditionally, a judicial warrant is required, but under recent federal action, they've been operating without the need for a warrant.
Yeah, so I'm clear on this. I did speak to the judge for a while, and he pointed out, and I like the part about a bench warrant, actually.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, are they being in any school that we know,
No, so we don't know that they've actually been in schools. However, what's happening is that, like the president said, ICE can come into the city. That's not what we're trying to prevent. We're trying to not create a mass hysteria as to what we have been seeing in the last 3 weeks with this administration, which they have caused. And we have seen in our city, we have seen immigration in our city. And so what we're trying to say to our community is that if you're undocumented, which is okay, and you're in a school, we don't want you to be afraid that they can come in just like, how you see on TV, just like whatever, and come and take you, because that's not what's happening, or that's not what we are trying, that's what we're trying to prevent. We want you to know that if you are at a hospital, at a church, at a school, you are in a safe space, and there shouldn't be anything that you're worried about. If ICE does come in, they do have to have a live warrant for you, which in a lot of cases, could be for criminal action or something like that. But they haven't been, that we've seen or that we've heard, not in Pawtucket or Central Falls. There was, I believe ICE did detain a couple people in Newport, which I believe is not due to the administration. I think it's just due to the everyday duties of ICE and what they're doing.
Yeah, I would just add, Councilman, that we've heard of, as the rep said, of families and students not attending school because of it. So that's what this does, is like saying it's okay to go to school because it will be protected.
Yes. And Council President, I wanted to just say that this by no means that we are trying to prohibit our law enforcement from doing their job. We understand that there is a job that they have to do, and we are supportive of that. What we're trying to say is that we want to make sure that all the protocols are in place in case this does happen. If they do have to go into these spaces to detain someone, that there is a real warrant, something that is real and legit, and not something that is made up on your computer through, ChatGPT or Canva or one of those digital things or whatever. So we want to make sure that our residents know that this is a safe space for them.
Anyone else? Looking for a motion to approve this resolution?
So,
Second. Go ahead. He's always late to the dance. Roll call vote?
Councilperson Maena,
Yes.
Councilperson Kazarian,
Yes.
Councilperson Piero,
Yes.
Councilperson Rivas Lugo,
Yes.
Councilperson Rosado Martinez,
Yes.
Council President Ferry.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
I want to thank you
Okay.
for being here, and I only met you once, that was election day.
Well, this is my first one, so I'm ready back.
You're doing a good job.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Reverend.
you.
And thank you, for the support.
The next item on the agenda is the presentation by Erica Olobri, CPAs regarding audit results for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2024.
The 1 hour presentation. I don't want to.
You guys would be sleeping if it was an hour.
It's gonna cut it short this year. Did you make the one? Raphael's gonna pass out the sandwiches.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. So as you know, the financial statements were issued, back in December. You do have a slide deck, you do have a communication letter in the actual financial statements, copy of the issued financial statements. Before I get started, I just wanna thank Mary and her team for, doing such a helpful job getting us through the audit process. We come to do the presentation for you, but it is a long process. It starts in June, goes all the way through December, so it does take a lot of time to pull all this together. So you do have a good team down there. So going through the slide deck here on the agenda, so I'm gonna take you through the audit results for June 30th, 2024. I'll go through some major estimates and judgments that are included in the financials, and it's all in the disclosures as well. We'll go on some special matters impacting this year's audit, any perspectives on any other matters we came across when we were doing the audit, and then we'll go over, there was just some IT communications and best practices that we could do better going forward to kind of tighten up the controls here. And then if you have any questions, we can go through those. So overall, the audit results, you have a few different opinions in there because you have a federal financial compliance audit as well as the opinion on the financial statements. So the first few pages focus on the opinion on the financial statements in the footnotes. So again, we did all of our audit testing based on the risk assessment and working with management here in your team. We do have that opinion in the financial statements. It is considered a clean, unmodified opinion, so that is what you want. Some other matters that we look at here, so during the audit, we didn't come across any instances of fraud or any illegal acts. We didn't have any material uncertainties that were noted during the audit. No significant changes were required to what we planned to do for the audit as we started to dig into the test work. We also want to point your attention to, there is some supplemental information in the financial statements. You have required supplementary information, which includes, your budget to actual, and we'll go over those results as well. You also have some pension supplementary information, which there's a lot of detail in there on all the state pensions. And and the OPEB required disclosures as well. So on the supplemental information, again, when we're looking at that, we're looking at a part of the financial statements as a whole. A lot of the supplementary information for the pension and the OPEB comes from your actuaries. So we do some analytic procedures, we test the assumptions that they're using in those reports, and then we add those to the disclosures as well. And then the next page here, it goes over the report under government auditing standards. So this is a report that is really generated based on having the federal funding. So if there are any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, they would be disclosed in that report. There are none to note, so that's a good thing. So no instances of non-compliance, and no matters from internal controls or financial reporting that we rose to a significant deficiency or material weakness. So we also had the federal reporting under the uniform guidance. We have given the opinion that the city complied in all material respects. The major program that was selected this year was the ARPA funding. So there were no instances of non-compliance rate for that program. And no internal controls related to that program as well. So the next few items on the audit results. So during this year, there were no changes in any accounting policies. We didn't know any significant or unusual transactions. We didn't identify any alternative accounting policies that were applied. So based on what we had planned to do, there was no changes in the audit strategy there. And then the next slide really just goes over the conclusions on the communications with government. So when we go through the audit, we may have some auditor detected adjustments. A lot of the adjustments we got were all provided by Mary and the team. So there weren't any, audit adjustments where we had to assess those from a weakness standpoint. There were no adjustments that we brought to Mary's attention that she passed on. So if there was, we would bring those to your attention as well. So any adjustments we discussed with her, they were all posted into the financial statements. On the financial statement disclosures, we just like to point out some significant ones in there, obviously related to pension plan in note 9, and then the other post-employment benefits, which is described in note 10. So there's a lot of information in there on how those liabilities are arrived at and who's included in those pension plans. The other information and documents containing audited financial statements. So we're not aware of the financials being put into an annual report or anything. So we just want to make you aware of that as well. We didn't know any related party matters that needed to be disclosed. During the audit, we didn't have any disagreements. We worked very well with Mary and the team. If there are any consultations with any other firms on the treatment of how things are reported, we would have to bring that to your attention. To our knowledge, there was none. We didn't have to have any other consultations with anyone outside the engagement team, so everything was pretty seamless from how it was reported within the standards. No other issues and no other difficulties were encountered during the audit process. So the next slide really just goes over your major estimates and the judgments that are included in the financial statements. So just be aware that the net pension liability, the OPEB liability, there's significant assumptions and, based on your investment performance year to year, those liabilities can change for the good or the bad. You also have the estimate of the allowance for doubtful accounts. So if you have something on the books that you're saying is $10,000 due from someone and you're estimating it 100% collectible, that's an estimate. So that's built into the financial statements. Also a big estimate that's in the financials and usually on a lot of cities is the significant one was the capital assets, the useful life that you use. So that affects the depreciation that's recorded on an annual basis. So again, during our audit process, we look at all these estimates and we build it into our testing. So we looked at those from a reasonableness standpoint, and based on our testing, it didn't result in anything unusual from that practice. So the next few slides are really just gonna go through the results, as of 6/30/24. The first one here is the government-wide financial statements. So this is really on a full accrual basis, so not on the fund accounting basis. So this is really showing your total assets from year to year. So this year, as of 6/30/24, you're looking at 71.2 million versus last year it was about 59 million in total assets. Liabilities about 41.7, and last year was about 47 million. Overall, the net position this year is about 31.1, and last year was 13.7 million. And just keep in mind, a lot of that is the ARPA funding. We did have a significant amount of funding that came in that will go away, so something to be aware of there. The next slide here goes over the program revenues versus year to year. This year you're at 21 million. Last year you were at 17.5 million. Versus your expenses, your general revenues were 20 million versus 18.7. And then your total expenses are about 23.9 versus 21 million last year. So overall, you're increasing your net position about 17.3 million. So that's a good thing. You want to stay with that increase in net position. I know with a lot of communities, you're looking at different ways to budget with the ARPA funding going away. So it's just something to keep in mind. The next one here is probably a little bit more familiar. So this is the fund level financial statement. So this really shows your different funds. So your general fund, anything that met the definition of a major fund is shown on the face of the balance sheet. So the new high school bond fund, so that's in there and the activity for that, CDBG, and then you have the American Rescue Plan and what's left in that. The last column there, second to the last column, is all your other governmental funds rolled into one that didn't meet the definition of a major fund. So overall, your general fund looks like total assets of about 7.1 million, and your unassigned fund balance is about 2.5 million as of 6/30/24. And then the next slide here really just talks about the revenues and the expenses for those funds. So this will go through the general fund and all the categories of revenues you have totaling 21.9 million. And then your expenses were about 20.4 million. So overall, an increase of about 1.6 million. So keep in mind, this is on a GAAP basis. There are some funds that roll into this and collapse into the general fund. And when we look at the budgetary, it's just a little bit different on the budgetary because it's excluding some of the funds that don't roll in here. You'll also see the activity on the new high school bond fund, which shows that you got the revenues in for $10.8 million, capital expenditures of 11.2, and then there was also an issuance of debt of about 3.2 million. Any questions so far?
So far the train's running smooth.
Can you say what the definition for major fund is, or the characteristics of a major fund?
So with the major funds, we have to look at a certain percentage of assets and liabilities every year. We have to assess it depending on your total assets and liabilities. And it's, for governmental funds, it's about 10% of assets and liabilities. All right, so the next few slides really go over your budget to actual. This is on a budgetary basis. So this is slide 14. So in your actual financial statements, there's a lot more detail on what rolls into tax revenue, state revenue. But this just gives you an overview from the budget standpoint. You were about at a budget of 20.4 million, you came in at 21.5. Largely you had some increases over state revenue, and then your tax revenue came in higher than budget. the next few slides really go over, and as well, when you look at your financials, there's more detail when what's in general government, meaning their salaries and healthcare and things like that. But overall, your expenses, when you get down to the total expenditures, you're at 20.2 million versus the budget of 20.4 million. So overall, budgetary surplus of about 1.2 million this year. So the next few slides here really just kind of point out, that what we have for net pension liabilities. Again, there are a lot of plans that are disclosed in the financial statements. All the pensions noted on the first slide below, police and fire legacy, and the municipal. Those are with the state mayor's plan now. So there's a large $24 million liability out there for the legacy plan. There is an asset on the new plan of $82,000. The municipal plan has a liability of $1.8 million. So again, the annual required contributions are being met, so that is what you want to stay on top of. You want to make sure you're making those required payments. And then overall, the net OPEB liabilities, the city plan has a liability of 1.6 million. And the funding ratio did increase to 41% from 36 last year. So that's going in the right direction. You're funding it. That should go up from year to year. So you want to make sure you're funding it more. And the next thing is really just some observations from an IT control deficiency. I know we all work in a remote world now. It's just to be aware of the risks out there, making sure you have a really enhanced cybersecurity program, making sure that you have no IT is involved in managing your IT system. So it's really having a second set of eyes, having someone in IT looking at it as also as someone else outside of it. And then also looking at access reviews, who's accessing the systems and making sure that's documented so you can always get back to who may have done something in the system. Also your third-party vendors, you just want to make sure that you're pulling if they have a SOC report, which is an audit on their controls. It's always good to access that to make sure there's no issues with those, and it's available, as a customer, you should be able to get those. And ask any questions you need to. And that's really the presentation. Obviously in the final package, there's a lot of information, and I do encourage you to read the notes. I know some of you are very familiar from a few years, so the notes have a lot of information in them. There were no significant new accounting standards that were implemented this year, so pretty standard from last year. There are some new ones coming down the pipe. There's a new one for compensated absences, so that'll be coming out and changing. Really just the way it's calculated and disclosed as well.
Well, another 50 minutes.
You have to put on some music for that.
From overall, we're on the right track. I think things are fine.
Yes, I think you guys are doing great.
Thank you, Mary, and your fine job.
Mary has a great team down there. She's doing great things.
Any questions?
Go
ahead.
I was gonna say, the one thing that sort of sticks out to me is and I know it's out of our control, but it's like the pension and OPEB liabilities. It's like,
It is.
and I feel like it'll keep growing, like as people retire, right? Because those are requirements to fulfill. And again, I know it's not like something we control necessarily, because we don't control when people retire, we don't control, that type of stuff, but just the numbers sort of like.
It's overwhelming, yeah.
Yeah.
The big thing is to stay on top of the annual required contribution, work with the actuaries during the year to see if there's any, obviously when you see blips in the investments and things like that, that has a huge impact. So when they perform well, it's better off for the plan. but I think it's really just staying on top of that required contribution. I will say you're not the only community.
Right.
That there's a lot of liabilities out there.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I don't have questions. Thank you so much for this presentation. Thank you to Finance Department and the administration for doing all these numbers clear to us and to the city resident down this thing where the money going. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda, number 7, schedule of bills, hearings, and considerations. Under A, a resolution in support of Hudson Hall Development, PCF Development, under the land plan for 532 Roosevelt Avenue, and all other properties in their submission to the Rhode Island Housing for Low Income Hardship Tax Credit.
I requested it, but I think Councilman Kazarian could shed some light on that project.
No, I can't, that's not the board.
Oh, is that correct?
Yeah. That's why,
Oh, any questions?
but there's I can just share that with you, if you like to see, that's what the plan is.
Is everyone familiar with where the property is located?
Yes.
Thankfully, they're, yeah, I'm sorry. City Solicitor.
Mr. President, I would just add that this property is on the corner of where PCFD's already been doing ongoing redevelopment work for the last 5 years. They have 44 Central, which was referred to earlier. They have a project in 23 Central. And then moving towards Roosevelt, this is on the corner of Roosevelt. This property was actually one of several properties in the city that was under state receivership that was previously owned by KQA Properties. And the city worked collaboratively with PCFD in identifying the property in a judicial receivership and working with them to identify the funds to be eligible to purchase this property because it really it ties their entire project together, having that corner, because they also have the Pulaski, the old Polish society next door.
That's correct.
It is an initiative that they did work very, very collaboratively with the law department over.
And I assume most of the properties are going to be demolished.
I don't know the answer to that. I don't think so. I think the Emory, yeah, the building in between is going to be parking.
Yeah, might be two there. Thank God. Anyway,
I think it might have actually started already.
anyone else?
I would make a motion to approve. I think CCSD does a really great job in our community. I actually, thanks to them, was able to go through like the first-time home buyer process and get all of the education that I needed in order to purchase my home. And so, Linda is great, and I think, the mission and the work that they do is really helpful for our community, so I'll make a motion.
I'll second. Roll call vote.
Councilperson Diana?
Yes.
Councilperson Kazarian?
Again, I'll have to excuse myself on that, because I'm a board member.
Councilperson Figueroa?
Yes.
Councilperson Rivas Lugo?
Yes.
Councilperson Rosado Martinez?
Yes.
Council President Ferry?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0, one recusal. The next item on the agenda is item B, a resolution designating the week of February 7th through February 14th, 2025 as Congenital Heart Defect Awareness Week in Central Falls.
Thank you. This is a resolution I put forth every year, just to bring awareness to this very devastating heart defect. I have someone that I know whose child suffers from it, and we see how much of a warrior he is having to have multiple surgeries, and still, just living his life. And so I put this forth just to bring awareness to this defect, and would hope to have this for council.
Anyone else? Looking for a motion?
So,
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
I,
Chair votes aye.
Motion passes
Thank
6-0. Next item on the agenda is item E, a resolution supporting the litigation brought by Attorney General Morona challenging President Donald Trump's unconstitutional executive order purporting to end birthright citizenship.
I think you skipped, zoning on, can we do it?
That's after.
it's after that one.
Yeah, the, updating of the,
The agenda, the updating the agenda, Mr. President.
yeah,
Yeah,
you
I'm first.
skipped that.
Hello, everyone. Yes, I present this resolution because the motion due to support the decision of our Attorney General Pierre Nerona to fight and stop this executive order. I believe that they must take care of our constitution, and that's why I support this action. And for that, I hope you, because you can support this motion, resolution. Thank you.
Anyone? Any further questions? Is there a motion?
Sure, I'll make the motion to support.
Councilor Zero. Second by Rafael. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Chair votes aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
No, I think we skipped D though, didn't we? Updating the, zoning ordinance from
That's
Chinese.
item F.
Yes.
Next item on the agenda is item F, Appendix A, zoning ordinance for the city of Central Falls as updated and amended from time to time. Second reading.
I guess the question is for that, I don't think we've had any major changes in our zoning. I didn't have that, see, so we're both right. Welcome.
Thank you.
So that question will go to you. I don't think we've had any major zoning changes, have we, recently?
So, at the last council meeting, this proposed amendment to the ordinance was introduced, it had been introduced in November, and there was the public hearing and first passage of the previous meeting. There was some discussion during the meeting, but to be clear, any further changes to the ordinance would require going through the public hearing process again and the advertisement for 3 weeks prior to the meeting. So there were no specific changes, substantive changes, but as you may recall, during that discussion at the last meeting, there were a couple of what were referred to as Scrivener's errors, which were some relatively minor, non-substantive errors in the code. Councilwoman Baena pointed out a couple of things. I appreciate the sharp eye. So what was distributed for your review prior to tonight's meeting was a version of the ordinance that included the changes since that last time. So those typos, those additional words and so on that needed to be deleted were removed. There were also some formatting changes just for readability. I'd be happy to point those out and go through, but they're marked within the version of the ordinance that you received this evening. So anything that had been removed has a strike through, anything that had been added is indicated with an underline. But just to reiterate the presentation that was made by our legal consultant, Eleanor Salvatore, at the previous meeting, these are changes to the ordinance that we're required to make in order to be in compliance with state law. This is the first major round of those. There are some subsequent changes that were made as a result of some more recent legislation that was passed. These cover the bulk of those changes that were made, but again, they're required by state law.
Anyone? Speaks for itself. We've always followed the law, correct? We've always had two public meetings when we did have zoning change.
I did have some questions, Jim, and thank you for making yourself available and chatting with me on the phone about some of the, questions I had. Just wanted to, cause these were some of the sort of things that caught my eye that I just wanted to make sure everyone understands, especially just for public record, right, that there are some, allowances of, like, new state law, permits, people to go in front of the planning board for zoning changes if they already have a case in front of the planning board. But we're not necessarily saying that we are currently in this ordinance combining our zoning and planning boards, correct?
The second part is correct, but if I can add a little bit that I hope can clarify that they're actually two separate issues.
Okay.
One is what's referred to as unified development review. So what that refers to is if there's an application for a proposed development that requires a review by the planning board, which is the plans themselves need to be reviewed, that also would require a zoning variance or a special use permit. Those now, rather than going before the zoning board separately from the planning board, those are presented to you as a unified application to the planning board. So the planning board reviews both the request for the relief from the zoning ordinance as well as the review of the plans. So that's unified development review. State law required that even before the passage of current ordinance that's in front of you. We've been doing that since the beginning of 2024 in order to comply with state law. The second item that you referred to is a more recent change that is optional. So it's a change to state law that makes it optional for municipalities to combine their zoning board and their planning board into a combined review board. That is something that we are strongly considering and working on now, just to effectively, since the time the Unified Development Review went into effect, I believe there have been two, maybe three, but two cases that have gone before just the zoning board, whereas we used to have one or two per month in most cases. So those now go in order to streamline the process, which is the intent of the state law, is to really try to eliminate a lot of the additional steps. So
Thank you.
hopefully that clarified it two different things. So
think
one,
third
we
time's
have
the
to do in the
charm.
Unified Development Review, that's in the current ordinance. The combining of the boards is something that is optional, and you will likely see more about that.
Like I said, I think third time's a charm, so thank you, because that'll stay with me now.
All right.
I appreciate that. Let's see. And then we talked about just like the map that's referenced. If anyone was looking for it, they would go to the clerk's office for looking at the map that's referenced in the ordinance, because I was looking for it, but obviously it's not in there. And then you talked about some changes. One of them I saw was formula business that was like crossed off.
So the reason it was modified,
Okay.
so you'll see a lot of strike throughs.
Yeah.
We still have formula business identified as permissible by special use in some zones. But because of a change in state law, unless you have clear and specific objective criteria for making a decision about whether to grant a special use permit, then it would be allowed by right. And so we had criteria from the time that was included in the ordinance by special use going back 3 years or so. Some of those criteria didn't meet the state requirements. And so everything that's left in there, so you'll see for those types of businesses, formula businesses, there are a number of criteria that remain, and those are very specific and measurable criteria.
And I just want to say kudos to that, because I think having that specific criteria is very important. So the fact that you took the time to go through and create that criteria
I'll defer to our,
the team.
when that was first introduced, I know the law department, was very careful about including those, and that was
Yeah.
before that provision was in the state law, so
That's
we
great.
still want to control
Mhm.
how many of those there are, and they have to meet those criteria.
Yeah, that makes sense. I appreciate, the team's work on that and also on the technical review committee, like we talked about on the phone, because I thought it was really nice to be able to have a formal way for people to, be able to review the applications that come, before you and before the board. So if you wanna just touch a little bit on that, that's
Sure.
great.
Yeah, so, again, this is something that municipalities can do, and we are opting to do this, to create a technical review committee. It's something we do informally now, I'll say. So an application comes in, it's reviewed by the planning department and distributed to other departments, public safety, fire department, for example, if there's an issue that they identify for making sure that there's access for emergency vehicles, they have an opportunity to review that. What we're doing is formalizing a group, that committee that will include, and the members are identified there, the representative of the police department, fire department, public works, code enforcement. We're also adding to that. Now, the city does not have an engineer. Given our size, there's not demand for a full-time engineer, but in some cases, there are very specific technical issues that come before us that we need to review, and being able to consult a professionally licensed engineer will be extremely helpful in doing that. Together, we each have our own levels of expertise. There's some things we can do, but this will just add really a level of careful review to that. And then there may be others from time to time, and I think the example I'd given before was, there may be a situation where we want to call in our tree warden for a specific situation. So it allows for that as well on a case-by-case basis, depending on the nature of the particular application that's before the board, to bring in that additional expertise.
All set? Anyone else? Any further questions with you? I'm looking for a motion to approve.
Make the motion.
For a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Motion passes
Aye.
6-0.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is item G, guidance regarding court sessions of the municipal court, second reading.
Public hearing now open. Seeing none, hearing none, public hearing now closed. Is there a motion? This will be caught, second reading.
Sure, I'll make the motion for that, Councilperson.
A second.
Councilwoman May. Roll call vote.
Councilperson Baena?
Present.
Councilperson Kazarian?
Yes.
Councilperson Figueroa?
Yes.
Councilperson Rivas Lugo?
Yes.
Councilperson Rosana Martinez?
Yes.
Council President Ferry?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Point of clarification, did you mean to vote present or yes?
Oh, there's it present?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that was,
Thank you.
just want to make sure we're correctly
No,
counting.
I appreciate that.
That'd be perfect.
I think I'm used to hearing comments on things. Present.
Next item on the agenda is item H, an ordinance requiring the timeliness of claims against the city, second reading.
Everyone's familiar with that when we introduced, we were getting claims very late. Now we're in compliance, I believe, with the state law.
Yes, I make a motion to approve.
Motion approved by Councilwoman Mann.
Second.
And roll call vote.
Councilperson Baena?
Yes.
Councilperson Guerrero,
Yes, I'm present.
Councilperson Rivas Lugo,
Yes.
Councilperson Lozano Martinez,
Yes.
Council President Farrell.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. Next item under I is an ordinance prohibiting rodeos in the city of Central Falls. Introduction.
Before I introduce this, I'm not crazy, we've had 2 rodeos in the city over the years, and one of them didn't go too well from what I understand, so, the name of laughable, but, you know, somebody can ask to have a rodeo, so, you can't have one anymore. So introduced.
The next item on the agenda, under item 8, hearing and or consideration of claims, we have Ms. Cynthia Giluli of 10 Wake Robin Road, Lincoln. She's here for a pothole incident that occurred, and she has an estimated damage of $720.
First of all, I apologize, I didn't realize you were on the agenda, we could have moved you up, I knew you've been sitting there
Oh, it's okay.
sometime, the meetings could be.
It's been interesting.
Oh, okay, glad you enjoyed it. Coming. Everyone read the claim? I see the claim's been supported by the police department. I read the report, and I guess you saw the picture, you saw some, even parts of your car. The only thing, we have a limit on potholes. I believe it's $300 limit, correct, Matt? That's the only problem, but
That's a state law, not a city law.
yeah, everything's in order from what I saw, I don't know if other council members, the police department did verify that, yes, you.
Yes.
Yeah, I also saw 3 quotes, so thank you for going over.
But again, the limit is $300.
Yeah, I know. You make those all the time, Council President.
Oh, me? Any further questions?
I make a motion.
All those in favor?
Motion.
I'll second.
Everybody's behind you, but unfortunately, $300 is limit, we do approve it for $300.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, I apologize for the
And
inconvenience.
if you enjoyed the meeting, we'll have popcorn next time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda under 9 is adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
And
I'll second.
might as well go for it. I have a request for the city clerk. Actually, chief of staff. It's been 6 months.
No.
Oh, the clock is still.
I will take a look at that. I do. Time actually suspends when we're in the council chamber.
Yes.